Come from a business family where I think in last 200-300 years nobody had danced or music or art was not part of our household, and somehow I was interested in dance, and my mother saw that I was very flexible as a child. I grew up in a joint family, so I was little different than other 9 children, and my mother saw that I was different. I was so graceful even as a child, and she noticed that there's something special about me and my keen interest in dance, but I didn't know where to go and learn.
But your father, what was his name?
Yeah, my father's name is Prahlad Sheth, and my mother's name is Indumati Sheth, and they are very simple people who completely were happy with what I was happy with. They actually never interfered in my decisions, and that was one of the, I think, very fortunate thing. Secondly, money was never a problem in my home because it's a well-to-do business house where girls have also freedom to do what they wanted to do.
Which community do you belong to?
This is we had a temple in our house. It was a Krishna temple. So we are known as Vaishnav. Vaishnav is people who worship Krishna. So there was a very strong influence of Krishna worship around me. Like I remember getting up in the morning with the bells of our temple, and I loved the temple rituals as a child. I remember myself not going to school but helping my grandmother do all the puja and decorations, flowers and sandalwood paste, just make a paste for gods, put little clothes on the small Bal Krishna, and for us our toys were gods, and daily there was always food cooked for gods, so that was our first food we will eat, and so it was fantastic. I remember our house had a special well for gods, so pulling the water out from the well and take it on our heads for gods and just bathing them. So it was actually, instead of playing with toys, gods were our toys.
Always become elevated into gods.
Yeah, so it was absolutely quite a fascinating childhood. And because I grew up in a joint family, we were 9 children with 16 adults around us, and I remember feeding the cows, like the first food in the house when it was cooked. First they will take it out for gods and take it out for the cows and feed the cows first, and then food was eaten by other people. And I thought it is such an amazing tradition, and being with grandmother who was very devotional and full time since we get up till 11 in the morning is always puja and this and that, and I thought that it was a very, very strong, this bringing up had a very strong impression on me especially. And so when I started, I don't know when started dancing Kathak. Well, obviously Kathak is associated with Krishna and all the stories of Krishna. So this impression, I'm very sure, had a lot to do with my dance as well. And then later on, in 1991, we as a family, Devissaro, myself, Isha and our son Tao was born in Vrindavan, near Mathura, and we lived in the temple Radharaman Gera for almost 3.5 years. So where
and Vrindavan, of course, is the place of Krishna. It's where all the stories of Krishna evolved from. So, yeah.
So almost every day offering dance to Krishna and only dance for Krishna for 3.5 years was a amazing experience.
In 80s or before?
This was in 91. Yeah, 91. Much later, when we left Delhi in 89, we left Delhi, and then we moved to.
You were jumping ahead quite badly.
Yeah, now all over. But going back to the 83s and my Kathak and Chow days.
But who was your first teacher in dance?
My first teacher is Kumudini Lakia. And then,
so while being in Ahmedabad, you joined her?
I joined her in, I think, 1968.
And how old was you?
I must be 13. I born in 52 and 60.
So 65.
No, then it must be. I was just finished 12 and 13, just beginning, and that's where I joined Kumudini.
So it must have been around 64 or 65.
Yeah, 64, I think.
But how do you remember her classes? What was your impressions about her way of teaching?
I completely loved Kumudini Lakia. For me, she was the one who opened all the doors for me, doors of information, traveling, talking. She was actually one of the biggest influences on my mind. I was like a blank paper who was ready to just imbibe and absorb.
Have you met Kumudini?
Yeah.
She's a remarkable lady, and you know, back in the 60s, you know, she had travelled in the 50s with Ram Gopal. She had performed in the West. She represented the world. And her outlook was very contemporary, very modern. She was a very modern woman. She was a very emancipated woman in many ways.
And very beautiful. And so she had a very strong influence on me. So not just the dance, but how life is, her experiences of traveling all over the world, and her sense of humor was very, very. I was at impressionable age, and I think I was very influenced by her.
Very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky to have a teacher like her.
And what about Kathak? So what was the dance for you? How the dance opened for you? What was the most interesting for you in Kathak, in this style?
Yeah, what was wonderful about Kathak for me, the rhythm, the speed, and it was something which fitted my spirit, and the capacity to communicate with the audience. I think Kathak is one of the most communicative dance forms for me.
I think you also should mention that Daksha didn't choose to go to Kathak. She knew, when Daksha went to Kathak, she knew nothing about Kathak. Actually, her mother chose Kumudini because she was a lady teacher, without knowing whether it's Bharatnatyam or Kathak or Kuchipudi. It could have been anything. It was actually the teacher that...
I fell in love completely when I met her.
So it wasn't like a choice that I choose to do Kathak. It was nothing like that. It was just luck.
It was a destiny, and it somehow was the right dance form for me. And that I would say that it's just completely good destiny, that I went at the right time to the right teacher. And she happens to be a lady. So my parents completely trusted her, and I was completely under her supervision. And
And how the Chow started? What was the story of Chow?
Chow again was a revelation to me, because with a friend I just went to Krishna Chandra Nayak's class. I had no idea what Chow is, but I saw him giving the class, Krishna Chandra Nayak, And because he himself was such an amazing dancer, and I was completely floored by his beautiful, graceful, amazing dance. And I said, how come I didn't know about it? And I just got up and I asked Guruji, can I start learning? And he said, yeah, Daksha, please join the class. And that's it.
In Bharatiya Kala Kendra.
In Bharati Kala Kendra in 82, when I first saw Chow, and immediately started dancing in the class.
But by that time, did you have some other education? Did you?
Yeah, I finished in Gujarat. I'm a graduate in English literature. I was a very bright student, and my parents wanted that I should study further
And get married.
But I.
When?
This was all in 82. I finished my BA degree in 72. And then they were very keen that I should get married because of my other brothers, sisters were all getting married and had children. Younger ones were all married and they had children, and I was the elder one who was not married, who had no children and who had no intention of marriage.
But how you met your husband? How it happened?
That's another story. But
That is another story.
no, but one point I think is really interesting is that Kumudini is very sophisticated and a very urban lady. Krishna Chandra and I is completely opposite. He's absolutely a village man. He's very, very simple, so it was kind of beautiful because on one hand you studied from someone who was very urbanized, westernized, very global outlook. And then the next big influence is a village man who's incredibly simple, but just an extraordinary, very beautiful man.
He's from Mayur branch itself.
Yeah,
from the rural area.
Baripada, yeah. He's from a village, very small village, Baripada, where I went later on in 85 and studied in his house, in his village, and in his own
He was also
environment.
very old and very frail.
Very, very frail
He
and
died.
around, yeah.
Anyhow, so
So what is the story of your meeting? How it happened?
He should tell you. You can tell.
Just briefly.
I was studying Drupad vocal music.
But basically you are from Australia.
Australia.
When did you came to India? What was this?
1980.
1990. 80. Oh, it's completely different country.
Yeah.
That time.
Yeah. It was a very different country.
And you was interested in music.
Yeah, I was very interested in music, and I was studying with the Dagga brothers, Drupad with the Dagga brothers. And she happened to come along to one of the music classes.
But where exactly? In which place?
In Delhi, quite close. At that time, Fahimuddin Dagga was living in Bengali Market, which is very close to Bharati Kala Kendra.
And one of the brother was staying there in Bengali Market.
Fahimuddin, the one he had been professor at Rabindra Bharati University in Kolkata. Then he had come to Delhi, and I was actually I and one other American friend, and his wife, we were all living with him. It was the Guru Shishya Parampara. And Daksha happened to come with one of her friends just to sit in on a music class. So that's when we first met. And then we started bumping into each other because Bengali Market is where all the Kamani, Sri Ram Center, Triveni, all those performing venues are all in that same area. So somehow every time we would go to a show, we would meet each other. So then we started, the friendship developed, and that was the beginning of the end. But basically, it was there was a definite common interest. I was really interested in music and dance, and so was Daksha. So we found
Common music and dance was our common thread, and still is.
and it's remained the same.
Yeah,
Since.
and Dev was trained as a classical pianist Yeah. So
Western.
And your daughter, she was born in which year?
she was born in 84. Tao was born in 1991, and so Isha was born, and with Isha in my arms, we traveled everywhere. Wherever I went, she
There's
went.
also a very nice story which you should know. Was that when Daksha and I started going out together, even her guru bhais, the other people who were studying, all her teachers, all her friends, they all thought she was very crazy. She was crazy. She's a crazy girl. For a start, I had no money. I was living a very simple life in India, studying music. I had no job. I was not very eligible as a partner. And the second thing was that they all were convinced that if she got married to me, it would be the end of her dance. They all said, "You're a stupid girl. You're marrying this crazy Westerner who can't support you, and your dance will be finished."
And I will go to Australia.
And then she would go to Australia and everything, all this kind of stuff. And then on top of that, then within a very short period of us getting married, she became pregnant. And then they all said, "This is the end. Daksha Sheth is finished." Daksha was also still studying with Biju Maharaj, and she was still doing her chow. So even when she was pregnant, she was still doing her kathak and still doing her chow up until the 8th month. And then in the 8th month, she came to Ahmedabad. And then Isha was born, and after 6 weeks, she was back on the stage performing. And it was an amazing performance. Not just a good performance, it was one of the best performances of kathak I've ever seen. And this was 6 weeks after the delivery of a child. So people couldn't believe it. How is this girl doing it?
Devotion, complete devotion to
Devotion
dance.
and extremely strong mind.
Yeah, I think
And secondly, there's a bad habit in India to treat pregnancy like it's a sickness.
yeah.
You know, you have to eat massive amounts of food, and for Daksha, pregnancy was not a sickness, it was part
I
of
was
life.
so happy and so joyous to have our first child.
And I think it's good for Isha. Isha was in the tummy and Daksha was still dancing.
Yes, it gives some impact
Yeah,
also,
I think it has
somehow.
influence.
Yeah, definitely. There's,
And I was doing my Drupad practice, so we used to put the sound of the tambura. We used to play it so that she would hear the tambura.
Beautifully, beautifully. But do you do practice even today? I mean, you're out of it. Drupad is so serious.
I was not trying to be a Drupadia. I just I loved the training. But yeah, I don't sing anymore.
But you play. You play.
I compose now.
You compose.
So Drupad, the influence of Drupad is probably in my music, but I don't perform. And then I also studied Bansuri. I studied
Pakawaj.
And you completely settled down in India. So you settled down in India.
I settled down with my wife.
Now 33 years in India.
But sometimes you visit Australia.
I visit Australia occasionally,
Sometimes.
but I've never lived in Australia. I've always lived in India. I mean, since 1980, I've never lived in Australia. I visited for a month or so, to visit my parents. Krishna, she was studying with Biju Maharaj in the mornings from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And then at 1 o'clock she would go across she'd have her lunch, go across to Bhatya Kalakendra. And in the afternoon, from 2 o'clock on, she would be studying with Krishna Chandra Naik, the Chow Guru. And then Krishna Chandra Naik became very, very ill. He was a very old man. I think it was probably tuberculosis, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he lost a lot of weight, became very poor. And in the end, he had to go back to his village. He went back to his village to die, basically. So then Daksha decided, and at this stage, Isha was only about
Exactly 1 year old.
1 year old. And Daksha said, you know, Krishna Chandra Nayak is back in the village. I need to go to the village to study with him. And of course, I was very concerned because we had this very young child. But she's a very strong lady, and she has her own willpower. So in the end, she and Isha went to Baripoda. I took them there, and then I had to come back because I was earning money teaching piano. I was actually teaching piano in Delhi. At that stage, I was supporting them by teaching piano, and so I had to come back for my classes. And Isha and Daksha stayed there, but they were living actually in a village. They were living in the village in a grass hut.
In Orissa.
In Orissa, yeah. Because the thing was,
In Baripada.
the problem was that the traditional male teachers belonged to the warrior class. Chow is a warrior dance, and the dancers were of the warrior class. Krishna Chandra Nayak loved Daksha, so he was happy to teach her, but he died. And then she asked the other senior teachers.
No, that time he was alive.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
He was not very unwell.
He was bedridden. He couldn't do anything. So she asked these other teachers to teach her, and they refused. They said, "You're not Orissa. You're a girl. We don't teach girls, and you're not even from Orissa. So why should we teach you?" So Daksha went to learn from one of the musicians. What was his name?
Lal Mohan Patra.
Lal Mohan Patra. He was actually a musician. He wasn't a dancer. But he remembered, Daksha had the training from Guruji, but he hadn't taught her enough of the items. And Lal Mohan Patra, although he was a musician, he remembered all the items. But he was low caste. So he didn't live in the town. He lived in a village, a little grass hut village. So actually, in the end, Daksha was living in this low caste village on the outskirts of the town, which was really tough. And I doubt that there's ever been, at least there's been very, very few dancers who
in 1985.
85.
I think there's very few dancers who've had the kind of the courage to learn under conditions, especially with a 1-year-old child. It was pretty. It was very, very primitive.
And that time also I was learning with Shikan Sen, Lal Mohan Patra, obviously Guruji, Krishna Chandra Nayak, in whichever way he was teaching me from the bed, and Madan Mohan Lanka, who was also there. So I used to go and just talk with him, and he was not teaching me, but I had actually connection with the entire Chow teaching community there. And every evening, because I was there, all the people who were learning Chow will get together and we will have all the time dance during the evenings.
So you learned some kind of rhythm, you learned some patterns, musical patterns.
I just more or less was trying to learn what they had learned, because I was already a dancer. I could understand movement, but I wanted to just be able to capture what they think tradition, and in the raw form that they have learned, without making any change. And then obviously when I learn something, I always make it my own, and that's how I presented Chow. And that was the reason that Chow actually got attention.
It only lasted for a couple of years, sadly.
Yeah.
But there was, in the late 80s, before we left Delhi, from about 87 to 89, there was a small period when Chow, they would present these festivals of classical dance, and they would always ask Daksha to dance Chow. So you'd have Bharatnatyam, you'd have Kuchipudi, Odissi, Kathak, and Chow. But
In
it only-
Kamani Auditorium?
Yes,
Yeah,
Kamani.
It only lasted 2 years.
Yeah.
And then when basically when Daksha
1990.
This was during a 19, I would say 83 till
No, but this
88.
this is when you were studying, but the actual period when you were performing this was probably 87, 88. It's just a couple of years.
2-3 years that I was in Delhi. I was actually invited to all the classical dance festivals.
As a child dance.
As a child.
In late 80s.
Late 80s,
Late 80s.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
When
then,
Daksha left, sadly no one else took that on. And then when Daksha had Tao, the second child, after that she was not able to do it anyhow. I mean,
no, I was able to do, but then the life took a. We had another experiment in Vrindavan. So, see, for us, dance was also innovation in lifestyles as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just one small question about this studying during your time in village, yeah, in this Shohat village. So the Kathak is based on the Tukra, Torah, Paran, whatever. But what was the basic for you to learn in Chow, in case of Chow?
Chow,
This is
basic
also
were
some patterns.
chalis. The basic were simple walks, which is chalis, uflis. So that was their basic structure. And those simple walks were very, very, very aesthetically beautiful.
It's
And
actually
it was quite substantial. And then the same things, like you learn chali and ufli as a base, also you start dancing with sword and shield. So that's another introduction to the movement with weapon.
In Ufli is...
Yeah, ufli is actually variations of chali. Basic is very small, is 6 chalis, and from 6 chalis you have 36 uflis. So that is
it's
the
almost
basic.
like little small dance
Sequences.
Yeah, they come out of the Charlies.
And also that they have some kind of tala system. Tala
Yeah,
system
they
is
have
there.
they
The
have
Tala
their
system is
some
different.
distinct-
Though. It's very different because they use very long. Often the talams are very long. Like there'll be 27 matra talams. They're not like ding dal or things like that. These are very quite archaic kind of, very ancient kind of talams.
Okay, like de, da, ke, ta, de, da, de, de, da, ke, ta, de. So, and I loved it because it was so different to Kathak.
What is the name of this tal? This
This is actually just an 8-beat march.
Just 8-8,
This is
it's
a simple 8-beat.
de, da, de, de, da, ke, ta, So it can be 6 beats, it can be 7 beats, it can be 8 beats. But it was very interesting for me because it sounded
archaic, it's very-
yeah, because it sounded so archaic, and I loved it. I loved
Very
because it was
primal.
nothing sophisticated
Very
about
primal.
it.
It's really
Yeah,
primal.
primordial, yeah, and that was the power I enjoyed. I think in 1988 there was a martial art conference in Imphal in Manipur, and I was invited there to present Chow. And that time they had all different martial arts from India. I was fascinated by Thang Tha of Manipur. And they had one person from Kerala representing Kalaripaitu, and he showed the demonstration, and I was so awestruck. I said, what is this martial form? This is so amazing, and it looked so holistic to me. said, oh, this is one form I would like to learn. So immediately after that demonstration was over, I went to the teacher and I said, I want to learn this form. And I straight away in Imphal itself, I started learning. And I got his address. He says, I am from this place in Kerala.
Which is really
Yeah.
What
And
was his name?
within 2 weeks, I was in Kerala.
What was his name?
The teacher that I chose to study, his name is Guru Govindan Kutti Nair, and his son Satyen Nair. So they were my first Kalaripaita gurus.
And then you settled down for some time in Kerala?
Yeah, then what I did from 88 onwards, every year I used to go to Kerala for 2 months, 3 months, stay there and study with him. And then because our life was actually quite a gypsy life that time, we were traveling, we didn't want to live in Delhi, but we didn't know where to go. So we
went to Nrityagram.
We went to Nrityagram for 3 months in 89, and then for almost 1.5 years we had no home.
Protima loved, so when Protima set up Nrityagram, she wanted Daksha to be the child guru. So the idea was when Protima got the land, the first person she rang was Daksha, and she said, I've got this land, will you come down to Bangalore? So immediately I wound up my music teaching, and within 2 weeks we packed up and we went to Bangalore. We were the first people to ever go and join Protima.
And plant trees.
There was no building. There was no building there. There was just a tent and there was absolutely nothing there.
Only the land?
Only the land. Only the land.
Aha. So you started the classes there in Nrityagram?
No, that time there was absolutely nothing except open space.
Protima and the three of us and a few local workers. That was all that was there. She had just got the land. There was nothing built. And then Gerard Dacuna, the architect, he came along. So he started designing the place. And while we were there, the foundations for the first buildings were laid. But then we decided that we were at one point we were actually living. I was actually sleeping on the rocks because we were living out on the outside of a.
We had absolutely no money.
We had no money. Then she got very sick. She got typhoid. We had. We found ourselves living on this on the outskirts of a national park, and basically.
But the lion came. Lion was out, jumped out of the zoo. Somehow Shivatsa told us, look, I have the family house, the Haveli within Radharamangera. Why don't you come and stay there? So we said, okay, fine, that sounds a good solution. So we moved back from Bangalore. We came back towards Delhi, but not as far as Delhi, and we moved into his Haveli, and that was actually where we began the Daksha Sheth Dance Company, because up until then, Daksha had been doing basically solos or small duets, trios. The idea in Vrindavan.
And you settled down in these family temples?
In Radharamangera, yeah. And the house that we were renting from Shivatsa was very large. It was their original family home. It had 3 courtyards and 16 rooms.
One large hall where I used to practice.
So Daksha started teaching the local girls. She started teaching Kathak and Chow. And the idea we had was that we would attract other dancers from Delhi to come and live with us. You see, there was a problem we had, apart from the fact that we didn't like living in Delhi, even in terms of creating dance. The problem that we had was that everybody in Delhi, us included, had to do some other job in order to earn money. I was teaching piano, Daksha was doing things. Daksha was basically not doing so much. I was doing most of the earning of money. Daksha was practicing her dance. But the dancers that we were working with were generally teaching in schools or something like that. So then when you would get a show, we would find out who was available to do a show, and then we would rehearse maybe for, in the evenings after their work, we would rehearse for 2 or 3 hours, and maybe for 1 week or 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, and then we'd do a show. And it's always just one off. You do a show, and then if people liked the show, which sometimes they did, a month later they may get an offer to do it in some other venue in Delhi, but then different dancers would not be available. You'd go back to square one, you'd find some more dancers. We found it very frustrating. We decided that if you keep working like that, even after 30 years, you'll have nothing to show for it. It's just ad hocism. Grab a few people, throw something together, do a show. And we really believed that if you want to really create something which is strong and original, you have to have a group of people who are together for a long period of time, who work together, who live together. Then it may be possible. So when we got this 16-room Haveli in Vrindavan, we immediately thought we can have all these dancers, they can all live here, and we can rehearse and we can work and we can create something which is really strong and powerful.
And that was in 90s, yeah?
This was in 91.
91,
90,
you shifted.
91 we moved to Vrindavan.
Yeah.
To 91 you moved it. And you stayed for how many
Till
years?
93 July. 91, 2 and 3
Yeah,
years.
it's just 3 years, yeah.
And that was, you can say that your dance team was created there.
But it didn't happen.
No.
It didn't
It
happen.
didn't happen. You wanted.
It didn't happen because
Nobody came.
no
Yeah.
dancers, not a single dancer
Dancers came.
wanted to leave Delhi
Right.
to come and live in Vrindavan. Again, they all said, this girl is crazy. She is just a
I
mad.
had no address, I had no telephone, completely. And I'm totally with Krishna.
So Daksha,
Just offer dance to Krishna
so
and that's
basically,
it.
for most of that period, we did no public performances. But then we managed to get a small group of musicians
From
from
Vrindavan.
Vrindavan itself. We had a tabla player, we had a wonderful singer, Drupad singer, and we had a sitar player, and I used to play bansuri and pakawaj.
Okay.
So then Daksha started doing what we called Nritya Seva. Nritya means dance, Seva is offering. So it's not a performance. It's just offering of dance to Krishna.
In fact, all the musicians that we trained in Vrindavan are all now playing for Shiva's younger brother, Montu. Montu's whole team was trained by me. But which is good. So
yeah.
they play for him now, which is good. They are all employed and very happy. And this is, in the temple was one place where Isha started doing with me Nritya Seva to Krishna. So Isha didn't know about dance. I never taught her dance. I never, told her you must dance. Because I was dancing, she will follow me. And she also started offering dance to Krishna.
But Daksha was teaching students.
Yeah, I was teaching students. So Isha's first experience of performing was in the temple. And Tao was always crawling around because he was he was all the time all over the temple. So both the children actually grew up in the temple, which is quite an extraordinary experience for children to grow up. Complete, full of music, because all the time there is Sankirtan happening. We are offering our dance, music is happening, and kids are just playing.
Did you study also sometimes the dance from there, or you just imagined, you just created
See,
your
what
own?
happened, I had a poet who was himself a Ras Leela performer, So he daily came and Kalyanji Sharma, and he read poetry to me every single day. So our life was completely involved with Krishna and Radha.
So he would say, today is the day when Krishna does this, and then he would read to Daksha and to Isha the poems written by the Astachapya poets, which concern that particular activity of Krishna. So then, and the thing is that he didn't read poetry; he sang poetry. Poetry was never read. All poems were sung. So this man was, he was not. He never called himself a musician, but when he sang the poetry, it was always in talam, and it was always in raga. So it was incredible.
Classical.
Yeah, absolutely. And all Drupad tals, Dhamar and Chautala, and it was absolutely, and he was so knowledgeable. So he started writing poetry according to my dance. So we will both together work on our dance. And so today he say, okay, today is Radhaji's birthday. So let's compose a poem on that, and I will compose dance on that. So every time we go to the temple, it's a complete, just new composition was done. And then when I started doing Nritya Seva in Radha Raman Gera, other temples started calling me. Bake Bihari will send an invitation, please come and do Nritya Seva in our temple. So I started doing from one temple to the other temple, doing Nritya Seva.
This is what you're saying. There's no
inside the temple, in front of the god.
Originally was said to be a temple dance. It's, where the stories of Krishna, the katha, were told through dance. So basically what Daksha was doing was actually going back to that tradition and again doing the katha, the stories of Krishna, appropriate to each day in the temple.
They allowed me to do because I was doing with complete devotion. And there was no money. Nobody was working. There was no audience. There was no money. For me, I was just offering what I had the best, was my own dance. And that was what I had. I offered it to Krishna.
So you danced.
So I danced, and there was no wanting any return from anybody or anything. And I thought that was one of the strongest experiences of dance for me.
But did you dance also for the audience?
No,
occasionally. Actually, when they had the opening, the celebration of that temple, what was it called?
Yeah, Govind temple. But that was different. It was a conference. There was a conference that was only once.
And then in Kamani at the end.
That is a completely different.
But basically,
but
for
in
3
Vrindavan,
years, we've actually had.
You didn't have audience,
it was not meant for audience. I didn't want to dance for audience, and it was just for Krishna that we offered dance and music. I had always a tabla player. They played pakhavaj, flute, singer, sitar, and one of my students also joined playing pakhavaj. So sometimes 6 musicians. So it was absolutely amazing. And I remember that the last Holi in 93, completely at 2 o'clock in the morning, when before Krishna they closed the temple for putting Krishna to sleep, I danced on complete lal gulal. Complete floor is red, white and pink, and I danced on that, and it was the most beautiful divine experience. And I hope somebody has a recording of that. In those days we didn't have camera.
We didn't have money.
We didn't have any money. Forget about camera.
But you never repeated it later on?
No.
You don't know, do you remember?
See, then
something?
what happened, that people started hearing about it. So India International Center, somebody from India International called me through Srivatsa that please what you have composed, because in these 3.5 years I created a whole solo choreography called Ashtayam. the 8 prahar of Krishna's life. I made a whole 1.5 hour Ashtayam. Ashta means 8 and yam is one yam is 3 hours. So Ashtayam. So that makes 1 day of Krishna's life. And that is composed in Kathak.
Prahara, like a prahara.
Yeah.
Yam prahara, same.
Art prahar. Yeah. And all the music, music and song, the poetry, everything is, I think more than 16 ragas are used.
Yeah, there's 2 ragas
and
for
I
each,
think 10 or 11 different tals I have used. I dance all different tals
so
in each different prahar.
It was a Kathak in a totally different way.
But this, how long it was, this presentation? This
1.5 hours.
Oh.
Yeah. And I performed only twice. Once in Delhi, in India International Center, and once in Kerala. And that's it.
But it was a shame because it was really...
It's, I think, one of the...
It was Kathak...
Absolutely, Kathak requires this kind... And also, the poetry that I dance, I will recite. So there was no talking. The whole show was completely packed about Krishna.
This whole
1 day in Krishna life.
No. That she would come in and she would simply recite the poetry. And it's this incredible poetry of the Ashtachapya. And
Ashtachapya are the poets who wrote only about Krishna.
So it's not about Daksha. Look at me, which is a little bit... Kathak is always about look at me. This was about Krishna. Let's tell the story of Krishna.
And this Ashta, it's idea of 1 day. With
1 day in Krishna's life. From the beginning, like with waking up in Raga Lalita, I think. We began with Lalit when he wakes up till he plays Maharaj. And I ended the Ashtayam with 108 turns. Like the Mala, we have 108 beats. So at the end, I will do 108 turns and ending with the moksha.
And music is live music? Recorded?
All live.
All live.
Live music, yeah. And it was all traditional. It was the music which was associated with each of these with
different prahar, yeah.
So it begins with morning ragas and then later morning ragas, midday ragas, afternoon ragas, evening ragas, late night ragas.
Yeah, so according to the prahar, each raga was taken.
It was probably more classical than any Kathak dancer. I mean, because innovation can go 2 ways. I mean, sometimes our innovation is to go ahead of what other people are doing, but sometimes you find a whole new area by going backwards. And that can also be, I mean, in this case, it was a journey to try to see the roots of Kathak. Not that it may not have been the roots, but we imagined, and it was really powerful. It was incredibly powerful.
But how can you manage this solo dancing in various styles? Because Kathak is a solo dance, but Chao is not a solo dance. Chao is a group dance, basically.
Yeah, basically, I made the group dance into a solo.
Your vision is solo.
Yeah, she had to then compose it.
Yeah, I actually, after learning, that's what I was saying, that I learned the way they taught me. But then I transform what I learn according to my aesthetic and my ability, and my presentation was very, very different. And that's what appeals to people. When you present the form with your understanding,
and
refinement.
I mean, what is the difference between Gotapura dance and Odissi? It's Kalachara Mahapatra. You get one great dancer who refines it, then it becomes classical. The difference between a folk dance and a classical dance is really largely to do with the refinement of the performer. And so that's what Daksha did to Chao. She took the energy, the raw energy of the folk dance, and she simply, because she's by nature a very refined person, so that the gestures become very, very refined, very clean.
But could you teach to someone? Do you have some followers, some disciples in
21 years in Kerala, not even one person has come to learn from me yet. I
Either
don't have,
Kathak or Chow.
yeah, or anything.
It's a great loss. It's a great loss because actually there are so many. I mean, every production that we've ever done, we have always challenged ourselves to do something that we've never done before. So in many ways, every production, and that includes Ashtayam, it includes her. I mean, every production has the potential to go off in a completely different direction. Unfortunately, I mean, Isha's followed her own direction, but in terms of Kathak, the direction which Daksha opened up, also no one picked it up. The direction she opened up in Chow, no one else picked that up.
How can you describe this direction in Kathak?
The direction of Kathak was to take it back to take it out of the. You see what happens in Kathak. First, it goes from the temple, it goes into the court, then it goes into the courtesans. Now, the courtesans basically, it's all about getting money, earning money. Kathak is, so the courtesan has to dance and says, yeah, and some money, please, and the next one. That's exciting. There's nothing wrong with that. But basically, Daksha's direction was to take all of those elements, but put them back into a context where the central figure is not the dancer, but it's the subject that you're dancing about. In this case, it's Krishna. So the talking is still there. Daksha talked, but she didn't say, "Hey, dekho."
Everything was related to the concept.
It was this beautiful
of
poetry,
yeah.
the poetry of Krishna. So it was very classical. It was in many ways very, very classical. It was extremely classical, in fact, because it's traditional ragas. It's Astachapya poetry.
And all Drupad Dhamar, all tals were,
Drupad,
and we
Dhamar,
created
Shrotal.
also some new tals of our own.
Like what?
17 Matra, I can't remember Svetlana right now, but I love innovation, so we create our own tala, even in Shiva-Shakti.
I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah, also the chant.
In Chow, I mean, one of the items that she did was on Sibelius's music.
Okay.
On Sibelius, yeah. Sibelius's Fifth Symphony. But she danced it because that symphony has. Sibelius has this raw energy. Sibelius celebrates that sense of
Power.
primordial energy, which actually matches very well with Chow. So she had done a solo on one section of Sibelius's Fifth Symphony, for example, which was really interesting because there was a very interesting connection between the movement and.
But do you believe in what people say contemporary? What is your idea? Because nowadays this whole discourse about
See,
something.
to me, all this contemporary and I don't know how to put it, but every dancer, to me, you learn the form, okay, but you transform it according to your physicality, your understanding, your maturity, and according to the concept that you want to talk about through your movement and your aesthetics, your presentation.
I mean, in many senses, all great dancers are contemporary, even if they're traditional. Like was Biju Maharaj a traditional dancer or a contemporary dancer?
He's today's Adhunik.
Yeah, he's contemporary.
But he's both. because in a sense his roots are absolutely
The
traditional.
Guru Shishya Parampara is there.
Yeah,
But, of course,
but
it's
if
today,
you look at his dance and
He
you look
changed
at,
a lot.
absolutely
Yes,
changed.
change everything.
Look at Shambhu Maharaj's dance and you look at Biju Maharaj.
Absolutely.
It's not the same dance.
Yeah,
It's radically different.
I'm sure Rajendra Gangan is totally different to what his family
And
was
that's
dancing.
the value of it. That's
Yeah,
what
and
makes
that
it
is
alive.
important, and that is how it should be. You
That's
don't.
what keeps it alive. Is that
Yeah.
every
It's
generation.
like water. It's a
Now,
river.
the problem with Guru Shishya Parampara is that someone like Biju Maharaj tries to freeze the tradition at his point. Now, what does that mean? It means that those students become wonderful ensemble dancers because they are all going to do everything exactly the same, but they don't have the charisma of an individual dancer.
Right.
So all you're doing is producing ensemble dancers, but you're not producing great dancers anymore. Great dancers have to come. You have to find something from yourself, and if you don't do that, you're just going to be a copy.
There is very simple answer to the question: what is the contemporary dance? So the people who is just laid down on the stomach and moving somehow.
They call it contemporary.
Yeah. In this case, and just moving your legs in the air, so whatever. So, but it's a question of what? I don't know, of a visuality, of a technique that is maybe different from Kathak, classical Kathak, whatever. So, what is the extent of your creation? I mean, it's a question of a borderline in each style. So, if we say Kathak, so sometimes people just acknowledge that Kumudini Lakshya styles is a little bit further from other Kathak dancers. However, it is a Kathak, but maybe a little bit further. Yeah. But when the Kathak no more Kathak, so for you there is some kind of extent to which you can create or whatever. So because if you just lay down on your belly,
Stomach,
and then. Is it Kathak or is it... that is a question of definition only.
The thing is that,
Definitional.
Yeah. I mean, the definitions are not really important to Daksha. I mean, the definitions are important to
Scholars.
to some people.
For writing the books.
Yeah. The interesting story about Daksha is that in 1986, partly under Daksha created a work on Vivaldi's Four Seasons, on summer from Vivaldi to Kathak. It was traditional Kathak in many ways, but in many ways it wasn't traditional. For a start, she danced in a black costume. She, instead of doing the chakras, Daksha spent about 6 months working on this. It's only about 6 minutes long, but she spent 6 months working on it.
On the chakra.
The chakras, she evolved how to do chakras in the opposite direction.
In many different ways.
How many ways can you do a chakra? And in that, she created a whole bunch of ways of doing a chakra which were not traditional. But they're still chakras. They're still turns. The turn is there, but the way of doing it changes. She presented that in Kamani.
In 1986. 86.
Yeah. And it was in a Kathak Kendra festival.
And I didn't tell anybody.
She didn't tell anyone because she knew that if she told them, they would say you can't do it because this is not Kathak.
But how long was your presentation?
Only 7 minutes of innovation, but I didn't tell that I'm going to do that. I was given 15 minutes. So before that, I danced completely traditional Damar, only on theka, nobody accompanying me.
Only tabla, only tabla.
Only the theka.
No tabla, not playing anything.
Yeah.
Just all rhythm is from her.
But who is making the teka for you? No musician? You did a teka.
And a tabla player. But the tabla player was not a Kathak tabla player. He didn't know any Kathak, but he had a nice tone. And I'm not a...
He just put it the tala. He just played the tala.
Basic tala.
That's all.
Basic tala. So basically it's a real challenge because in Dhamma, most Kathak dancers rely on the tabla player to keep it all together. In this case, the tabla player and me, we are just
keep teka.
We are just keeping teka. Everything is coming from her. So that in itself,
See, that was challenging.
That
So
was a
nobody has done that.
But that was just a classical Kathak, some
Absolute
items.
Kathak, but my Kathak.
not
means-
Biju Maharaj's.
Yeah, I actually, even in traditional dance, I made all my own toda tukda, everything my own. I won't dance what Kunindhan
Some
had-
others,
yeah.
some others. So
I
you
did
created
create,
your own.
I create my own, and that was always a joy for me. That's how I became interested in creating.
And in the end, it was this chakra. This.
And then what I did, I removed my bells, my gunguru, and then I danced without gunguru.
In this Vivaldi Four Seasons.
Vivaldi Four Seasons was done without bells.
7 minutes.
7 minutes, and it was a riot.
After her item, all these people rushed on stage.
300 people came on stage to lift me up.
But the thing was that her teachers were very upset.
Very angry.
Vijay Maharaj, for example, was so angry. Durgalal.
Durgalal.
Durgalal was-
Vijay Maharaj was not even there. Durgalal became very angry.
But he's your teacher.
No, but he was a Kathak world, no? After me, Durgalal, that evening he was dancing. So he was in the green room. And they didn't like, I dance in black costume, I have no gungurus on,
And she
and
dances
I'm
Western
classical music. What is this music? And
But the audience loved it.
But he was not your teacher.
No, he was not my teacher that time. But I had danced with him couple of shows. And next day I was in every single newspaper.
But the thing,
86. 86.
I have some of the reviews
but
with
the
me.
thing was that it was so contentious that they actually banned her. They said this girl should never be allowed to perform in a Kathak Kendra festival.
Yeah.
So okay. So then from that 86 until she was never invited to festivals. She was never even invited to even watch festivals. She was dropped out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm never invited till today.
Outsider?
Yeah, I'm
no.
a complete outsider.
No, but then the funny thing is that sometime in the early 2002 or 2003, after Biju Maharaj had left Kathak Kendra, somebody there was a Kathak Kendra festival in Kolkata, and for some reason, I don't know why, they asked Daksha to perform. And Daksha said to them, look, I haven't danced Kathak now in 10 years.
More than 10.
And my company is not a Kathak company. We are doing something different. And they said, oh, no, please, you have to come. Whatever you do, we would love to see what you're doing. And so she went and performed what we were performing.
Another 15, 20 minutes.
Short thing. But then people criticized her for it not being Kathak. And Daksha said, well, I told you it's not Kathak. But it's Kathak influence. But it's, so the whole thing about the border. By that time, the Vivaldi was still within the border in the sense that the technique was Kathak. The presentation was not. Same as Kumudini. The technique was Kathak, but the presentation was different. But by the time 2002 or 2003 had come along, the only thing which remained from Kathak was the sense of the exploration of rhythm. But everything else had changed. So yes, it's even Daksha was telling them, it's not Kathak. And then after she performs, they all criticize her because it's not Kathak. And Daksha said, well, I'm sorry, I told you that's not Kathak. But yeah, it had crossed the boundary. It's no longer Kathak.
That means that people still are very much in frames. They are thinking within the frames.
Yeah, and also they like to put you in different categories. I don't want to belong to any category.
Some kind of
See,
place
people
of-
who do Svetlana, they don't care what other people think. Because if you are going to be bothered about what other people speak, you cannot do. It's about same in painting, same in music, same in any creative person. They are not going to be bothered about
You
other
have to have a
people's
thick skin.
opinion. Yeah, no, also you have to follow your own heart. All the people who, even writers, have the same thing. They have to write what they what they believe in and what they think that this is what I want to write.
And then the question whether that exploration takes you outside of a border is not particularly relevant to the dancer. It may be relevant to you or to the bureaucrat, but it's not relevant to the dancer.
Okay, yes, I agree. But what the question is about your troupe. So who supports you? What kind of musicians you can find out? Yeah, so that is so you have a
Our
company.
performances are our support. If we don't perform, we can't survive.
Who are you? Who are with you? What are your team?
Yeah, my team is a very small group of dancers, lot of musicians, because for each different productions we have different
Like
group of
Shiva-Shakti
it.
has 5 musicians, of which Tao is one, and 4 other musicians come
From
in.
Manipur.
But they come from Manipur, so we have to bring them in. The other production we have at the moment
Sari.
is called Sari, that has 8 musicians, of which the only person who's common to them both is Tao. Everybody else is different.
Sari?
Sari is another show of ours.
production.
It's another production which we have, which we're presenting which we're in our repertoire at the moment.
But what do you have is in your repertoire nowadays?
At the moment,
Right now 2, Sari and Shiva-Shakti.
Sari, what is the conception about the sari?
Sari,
So very
in a nutshell, Sari came out of. Sari was inspired by a lady called Rita Chisti, who has
we
done.
will send you all the pictures.
She has
and
done
the
a book
concept note and everything.
Rita has spent her life researching the Sari. She has done an encyclopedia of 16.
Textile production.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's actually a
About
narration
hand-woven cloth.
of a cotton seed. From we show the whole process from cotton seed to making of a sari
Dyeing,
and then
weaving.
wearing it in different ways. So the whole journey, it's also another very visually.
Explore of
You just
technology.
see the pictures, and I
So the
don't have to say
narrative
anything.
is how a sari is made, how a sari is worn. But partly it came out of this, the fact that the handloom industry is under serious threat. People now are wearing all this synthetic cloth. And
But in Gujarat you have so wonderful tradition.
we are shocked to see how, yesterday I was trying to buy a kurta and all the kurtas are synthetic. Just give me a simple cotton kurta, but it's hard to find now. So basically there was a social angle to this, because it's a great shame if the skill that has defined India for so many thousands of years, at least a couple of thousand years, that skill set of these weavers is incredible. If that gets lost, it's all dying. Globalization has benefits, but it has enormous threats. It's an invasion. Globalization is an invasion. India is in the middle of a massive, massive invasion. And the thing which can be lost is these traditional skills. So,
And I'm sure this must be also happening in Russia. Yeah, everywhere.
before.
Yeah.
But about this Shiva-Shakti that I witnessed, a lot of skills are there. Isha is beautiful in her practice and in this imagination. But what was your idea of your role? So that is a mother?
Yeah.
So that is just a dialogue between daughter and mother?
Actually, it's the red cloth represents the journey.
Daksha and Isha's dance is this transference of energy from one generation to the next. And then that energy becomes the energy of the mother-child energy becomes the energy of the lover and the loved, the beloved. And then you have separation because of war. And then you have death and destruction. And then you have resurrection at the end. You have, so we thought of it in terms, it's a show which actually needs to have a good program. But,
I give you the program.
but basically,
right now.
we thought of it in terms of three main sections. Actually, our works are quite strongly conceptual. Subterranean, terrestrial, and transcendental. The subterranean basically deals with the archetypal images which actually drive, which unconsciously influence everything that we do. The subterranean, the things which we are not aware of, but actually are the archetypal things which influence our
Archetypes,
entire life.
yes.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it starts off with very archetypal images. The male-female energy in different ways, the manifestation of energy. Terrestrial deals with the manifestations of those in our everyday life. And that's why it begins with Daksha first of all moving into a new world. And then Isha coming in, Daksha transferring her knowledge to Isha, then Isha, then there's a whole love duet, then the war horn sound, there's a separation because the man goes off, then you have the preparation of the army with the sticks, then you have war, you have death, you have destruction, and out of that, like the phoenix, out of the ashes of destruction, possibility perhaps of something transcendental arises. So the central section is actually about, in many ways it's about love and war as the two extremes of these, the whole thing is about Shiva and Shakti, the two opposites. And in our everyday life, love and war are those two things in extreme.
Right.
One represents the aversion that incites you to kill somebody, and one represents the attraction that incites you to become one with somebody. So that central section is, and then the final section is the possibility of those being unified into something which is transcendental, and then manifesting itself as the very final dance for us is like revelation, because even if you climb a mountain, you have to come down. You don't live on the mountain forever. You come down, and the only difference is perhaps how you manifest that experience in your life. So it's very much an art. It's very much an arch of structure, and it's all to do with
So now you believe in some kind of particular topics that you can bring all together, various forms like color palette, like tamkta, like whatever, and just make some kind of presentations.
What I would like to, what Daksha and I both feel is that if you learn a tradition, you learn it seriously as a tradition. When Daksha was studying Kathak, or when she was studying Chow, or when she was studying Kalari Payatu, she's not thinking, how am I going to use this? What value will this have to me later on?
I had no idea
You have to learn it sincerely as a tradition, and you learn it until it becomes natural. It becomes part of your body. But then when you do creative work, you forget. Then you drop everything, and these things will come out. The Kathak will come out in a way which is not Kathak.
Yes.
The Kalari Payat will come out, the Chow will come out, but you're not saying, let's do some Kathak and let's do some Chow and let's put a tukra.
You cannot calculate it.
There's no thought about it. Drop the mind and let the body express itself. And then the things will come out in a holistic and natural way. And I think for us at least, that's the way to create something. I mean, yes, one can see elements of all these things, but I would like to think that the show itself is not just a collection of elements, that it has a
journey.
It has a journey, and
that is the journey with
continuity about it.
And that journey that we want our audience to just have the same journey with us.
So there's not even a narrative. It's hard to say that there's a narrative, but there's absolutely a journey. And it's an emotional journey, it's a philosophical journey. And the idea is that every audience member may experience it in a different way, but we try to make sure that everybody takes a journey, that from where you are at the beginning and where you are at the end, there's a
You are with us
There's a
on
sense
this
of joy.
journey.